Thank you so much. So first of all, thank you very much for the invitation to be here today, participating in this ISNTD seminar. It's really a pleasure to be here with all of you. So I was asked to present on the DNDI strategy for the development of new treatments for visceral leishmaniasis, and I'm going to give you the view of current and future perspectives for the drug development. So Maria Paula helped me a lot because she gave a lot of this initial introduction to the disease. Here, I think my main message from this first slide is to remind you that among the different forms of leishmaniasis, the most severe form is visceral leishmaniasis, which is a disease that is fatal if not treated. And here you have on the right the picture of this child with VL. So usually they come with very enlarged spleen, liver. Usually they are very malnourished, pancytopenic. So it's really a disease that you have to act fast and treat these patients as soon as possible. The other important point I would like to make is that half of these patients affected by VL are children. So going now to the distribution of the disease, and also you saw already this map. This is the WHO map for the distribution of VL in the world. There are really three main endemic regions that we have. So South Asia, East Africa, and Latin America. So historically, South Asia was really the region where they had large majority of cases, in the world. But after there was political decision to implement the elimination program, now numbers are decreasing steadily year after year. So they are really moving towards elimination as a public health problem. And I think this is really a very good example that you have to look at and see if this could be also implemented in the other regions. East Africa is currently the highest burden region in the world. As you can see, countries affected are mainly in the Eastern African region. So it's Sudan, South Sudan, Ethiopia, Kenya, Uganda, and Somalia. And even though, in these two main endemic regions, the disease is caused by Leishmania donovani. It is an anthraponotic parasite. But even though it's the same Leishmania donovani, as you can see from the boxes, when you look at the first line treatment and second line treatment, they differ between the regions. And we think that this could be related to the parasite factors and host-related factors. But the truth is that you don't have one treatment that is successful for all of the VL patients. So the message is that you always have to adapt your treatment to the reality in each of the regions. And in general, it is more difficult to treat a VL patient in Africa as compared to Asia. Now, going to the other region that also we have a lot of cases, it's in Latin America, where more than 95% of the cases occur in Brazil. As mentioned by Maria Paula here, the disease is caused by Leishmania infantum. It is the same parasite that causes leishmaniasis in the Mediterranean region. It is a zoonosis there. Dogs are important reservoirs, and indeed this brings a lot of challenges to the control of the disease. In Brazil, currently the first line treatment is antimonial, but they are in process of changing to the Ambisome treatment. So these are the drugs that we have today to treat leishmaniasis. You probably are familiar with all of these drugs. We have the old antimonials that still have been used, except in Asia where there is resistance. Then we have liposomal amphotericin B, paramomycin, and mutafosine. And as mentioned before, all of these drugs, they have limitations, mainly associated with toxicities associated with these treatments. All of them, except mutafosine, are parenteral drugs that require IM or IV infusion. And in the case of amphotericin B, we need cold chain, which makes life a little bit complicated in the field, requiring really logistics to be able to implement this treatment. And if you look at the only one which is oral, mutafosine, it is certainly an improvement because it is oral, but we have, the issues of poor tolerability. A lot of patients have a lot of vomiting when they are treated with mutafosine. And I think the most important is the teratogenicity associated with mutafosine, which makes it very difficult to implement for women of childbearing potential in the endemic regions. So this is the slide where we talk about the DNDI strategy and how we see the development of new treatments. So for each and every disease that DNDI is working with, the first thing we ask when we have to implement a new strategy is really what are the patient's needs. So it's through consultation with the main stakeholders and developing what we call the target product profile that we are going to then identify which is the treatment that is needed for this patient population. So as described in the WHO NTD roadmap, one of the critical actions clearly is that we need to develop more user-friendly treatments. Examples are oral treatments that would be able to be implemented in primary healthcare settings. So the DNDI strategy aims to deliver safe, effective, short course oral treatment for visceral leishmaniasis. So VL is the main patient population. However, we have to look at other types of manifestations like post-Kala-azar dermal leishmaniasis. I'm going to talk a little bit about this later on. And also those who are very difficult to treat, the special population of co-infection patients who have both HIV and VL. And through the programs, we are always building and maintaining lots of partnerships in the endemic countries. So we build platform and consortiums that facilitates the clinical activities in the field, but then later on also aim to ensure access to these new tools. In this graph that you see here in the bottom, this is the DNDI portfolio for leishmaniasis. Each of these boxes represents one project. So from the beginning, we had short and long-term objectives in our strategy. The short-term strategy was to look at, okay, these are the drugs we have to treat leishmaniasis today. They all have limitations. Is there a way to improve on these treatments? So most of the new treatments that were developed were focusing on combination treatments. So by combining, you can reduce the treatment duration, usually improve safety and maintaining good efficacy rates for these drugs. So we have developed with partners the current first-line treatment in Africa, SSG-PM. There is also the combination treatments in South Asia. Paramomycin mutafosine is indicated as second-line treatment. We also participate in the effectiveness study for rollout of single-dose amisome. So these are achievements, but this is not sufficient, right? So right now, I'm going to give you more details about studies we are performing currently in Africa for development of paramomycin mutafosine for VL, the study we did with partners for HIV VL, and also studies on PKDL. But I'm going to give you more details in a while. And then, so these are the, treatments that we expect to have results this year, to be implemented maybe in the coming years. Of course, everything depends on the outcomes. We are positive that we're going to have good outcomes, but we have to wait and see. But really, the change in how we treat visceral leishmaniasis, we expect to come from the left side of the portfolio. Each of these boxes represent one new chemical entity. And you heard a lot from Maria Paula, the work it takes. So over the past 10 years, not just DNDI and many other partners invested a lot on the identification of new compounds. And fortunately, today, we have a good portfolio of different classes of compounds with different mechanisms of action that we believe will be able to deliver the oral, safe, effective treatment that we need to be implemented at the PHC level. So now I'm going to take you through a few details of the projects that we are conducting. So just here, as I said, Africa, we have a lot of attention to Africa because it's the highest burden region. And the previous treatment there was SSG alone for 30 days. So there is an improvement with SSG-PM with 91% efficacy. But these still have 17 days of 2 injections. You can see here the picture. SSG is quite a high volume. Paramomycin injection is quite painful, so it is a burden for the patient, right? There is also the toxicity associated with SSG that remains there. Patients that are above 50 years old do not tolerate, cannot take this treatment. The same thing for HIV-VL. So looking at alternatives, the one that looked more promising was to replace toxic SSG with oral mutafosine. So the DNDI did some studies, and first thing we observed was that when we use the mutafosine conventional dose that is highly efficacious in Asia, in Africa, we didn't have the same level of efficacy. We had only 72% efficacy, and especially children less than 12 years old, they had lower exposure of mutafosine and only 59% efficacy. So then there was a lot of work that was done by our partners suggesting that we had to actually modify the regimen for mutafosine in children, and then by using an allometric dosing, we were able to achieve 90% cure rate in children, and this is now the strategy that we are using for the new study. So paramomycin mutafosine is a treatment that is highly efficacious in Asia. With 10 days, you can get more than 95% efficacy, and it looked quite attractive in Africa, especially for the use in children. So we have launched a study back in 2018. It's a large phase 3 trial that involves partners in Ethiopia, Sudan, Kenya, and Uganda, where we are assessing this combination. But here we had to adapt, as I said, for Africa, longer duration, 14 days, and allometric dosing for mutafosine, aiming to achieve more than 90% efficacy. And this treatment now we're going to be comparing with the standard of care SSG-PM. Fortunately, despite all the challenges of COVID, we were able to complete recruitment in May, finished the follow-up. We need to do follow-up at least for 6 months for VL. This was completed in December. Now we are working hard on the data, and we hope that by beginning of Q3, around July, we should have the results of this trial, and hopefully with good results, as I said, mainly for children would be a very good alternative. Now, I was also asked by Cameron to talk a little bit about HIV-VL. So when we have patients that have visceral leishmaniasis, but at the same time are co-infected with HIV, these are the most difficult patients to treat. These are really patients that require very special management. They have usually poor treatment outcome, higher risk of mortality. And once you treat them, they have to be followed up because they have high risk of relapse, especially when they have low CD4 count. So it is very important that this patient has a holistic approach. You treat not just the VL, but also ART that is effective for the patient, and also treating other comorbidities that are very common in this patient population. HIV-VL is reported in 35 countries. Some countries with highest rates are Ethiopia, where we have 20% of the patients with HIV-VL co-infection, Brazil, and India. And to bring here the data, so based on the experience of MSF working on the day-to-day, having to deal with these patients that were very difficult to treat, they tried everything they could, and then there were very good, promising results with the combination of mutafosine. So DNDI with MSF, University of Gondar, Addis Ababa University, and ITM, we planned a randomized controlled trial in Ethiopia to assess the current treatment recommended by WHO, ambisome 40 milligram per kilo, but also the combination ambisome mutafosine. So to summarize, we had actually very good results with this study. We were able to achieve 91% efficacy at the end of treatment. And as I said, combined with ART, secondary prophylaxis during the follow-up, especially for those who have low CD4 count, and managing other comorbidities, that's how we think we would be able to improve the treatment for this patient population. So all this data was revised by WHO in the guideline development group back in October last year. And now we are expecting that the new guidelines on HIV-VL are going to be released around Q2, both by WHO, but also by the government in Ethiopia. And there is also the similar study which was done by MSF in India, having similar results. So this is the summary for HIV-VL. Now, this is one slide where I try to summarize post-Kala-azar dermal leishmaniasis. This is a condition that happens after patient is treated for VL. So depending on the region, like in Asia, 5 to 10% of the patients are going to develop PKDL, usually average 2 years after treatment. In East Africa, the country with highest rates is Sudan, where estimations is up to 50% of the patients can develop PKDL after being successfully treated for VL. The manifestations can differ. Also in India, usually they have macular presentation, as you see here on the left. In Sudan is the central picture with papular manifestation, but you also can have nodular manifestation of PKDL. So these are patients that are usually healthy individuals other than the skin rash. The problem is that they don't seek for diagnosis and treatment. They stay with this rash for a while, and now we know that they are important reservoirs of the disease. So there is a lot of attention for the need to identify and treat PKDL. However, the treatment we have today are really not appropriate for this patient population. So as you can see, antimonials up to 2 to 3 months with high risk of cardiotoxicity for a disease that is not life-threatening. Mutafosine for 12 weeks in South Asia, very difficult to implement, especially for women of childbearing age. And also when in Sudan they use Ambisome, they have to use very high doses. So clearly there is a very important need to improve treatments of PKDL. And some years ago, we started 2 studies, one in Asia, India and Bangladesh, and another one in Sudan. And again, we were able to complete recruitment. Now we are in the follow-up phase. Results expected this year. Again, we hope that at least this could be an improvement. These are combination treatments which are going to be shorter and hopefully can have an alternative in the short term for PKDL. So here, this is the summary of studies that are part of the short-term objectives and strategy, which we could deliver new treatments very soon. Results are going to be available this year, so hopefully with good results. But then now moving to what is going to be really the future of treatment for visceral leishmaniasis. And as defined by the WHO NTD roadmap, really the way we see the future of VL treatment is to focus on the development of oral, safe, effective treatments. So moving from injectable toxic drugs with variable efficacy requiring hospitalization to treatments that are oral, well tolerated, and therefore could be integrated at the PHC level. So again, I bring here, these are the portfolio with the different compounds. There was a lot of work done to be able to have this portfolio by DNDI and partners. Today, there are 5. In fact, there is one more, 245, done by GSK, has moved to phase 1. So we have 5 compounds that are currently being tested in healthy volunteers. The one that is more advanced is the one that LX-408 identified by Novartis. We have a collaboration with them, and we hope this year we are going to submit the first phase 2 trial to start study in patients. So there is a lot of expectation that with this very rich portfolio, we will be able to deliver pan-geographic oral treatment that will address the issues of safety and efficacy in all of the different regions. We believe that, as I said, the treatment will have to be tailored to the needs and characteristics of the population in the different regions. So maybe for some regions we could say that maybe monotherapy would be sufficient, but maybe for others, combination would be required, and that's why it is important to have many compounds that we'll be able to test, right? Byron is going to tell you more about immunomodulators, especially for complicated forms of CL. And then the other aspect is that we are putting a lot of attention in children. As I said, 50% of VL cases are children, so we are working on a pediatric plan to include children as early as possible and have the treatment adapted to this patient population, as well as women of childbearing age. So by having oral drugs that are safe and also associated with a diagnostics that can be deployed at PHC level, we think that this is, the way that we'll be able to integrate VL treatment with other diseases at the PHC level. So really changing the way we currently treat these patients. Another aspect that there is a lot of attention in the NTD roadmap is about prompt access to diagnosis and treatment. So by having a treatment that you can integrate at PHC, you would be able to reduce the time between onset of symptoms, access to treatment, therefore reducing morbidity, reducing mortality, which is the main indicator, and also breaking the cycle of transmission. So this is what we think will be, the future for VL treatment. This is it. Thank you so much.